Begin recording, and that brings us to the beginning of Model Monday here. So our project for today, beginner-friendly project in the spirit of Valentine's Day, in the spirit of Saint Valentine, the patron saint of dudes who shoot other dudes with arrows, and for some reason that makes you love people when you get shot with an arrow?
Always.
Right. That's science. All right. But we're going to make chocolates. So chocolates can be, you can make some small chocolates, you can 3D print them, and then you can use one of our vacuum formers to actually make a mold for said chocolates. So it's a fun project around this time of year, or any time of year, because people love chocolate. Also, super beginner friendly. So we'll make a couple of different shapes, and we'll kind of dive into a little more depth about the extrude tool, and maybe we'll even do a sweep. Ooh. All right, cool. So I don't want to scare anybody away. Let's go ahead. And I'm going to start a new document here. So Fusion 360 is a tabbed workspace. I should get my magical pointer tool out. So it's a tabbed working program, which is much better than a tabbed not working program. So at the top, we have a number of different tabs, and I've got a couple open documents already. So you can see I've got 2 open tabs. But if you want to start a new design or a new document, you can just hit the little plus button here in the top by your tabs, kind of like you would in a browser, and that will start you a new design here. Is there anybody who's like brand new to Fusion? Cool. All right, good. So in the top right-hand corner is our navigation cube. So this little cube is what we're going to use to navigate around our 3-dimensional drawing world. So we've got like a 3-dimensional space in front of us. It's empty right now, but if I were to put something in that space, like the project for the day, you can see that if I hover over the navigation cube, anything it's cut off by the projector, so I apologize. But anything that highlights blue when you hover over it with your mouse, you can click on it, and you can go and you can view that side, or I could view like this edge here. I could click on a corner of the cube, and I can kind of view like an isometric view like that. I can also click and drag on this navigation cube, and when I click and drag on the cube, I'm moving around in a little bit more granular way. At the bottom of our screen are a few more navigation tools. I'll be honest, I don't use these a whole lot. So there's an orbit tool, and you can grab that orbit tool, and now you can see I'm holding it in my hand, and I can click and drag anywhere on the screen, and I can move around. Just like I was using that navigation cube up in the top right-hand corner. When I'm done using a tool that I grabbed from down here, in order to put it away, I hit the escape key. There's a hand tool, and the hand tool lets kind of pan up and down and pan left and right. And then there's a zoom in and zoom out tool. I don't use those tools a whole lot because I can zoom in and zoom out with just my trackpad, or if you've got a mouse, your scroll wheel on your mouse will zoom you in and out. If you've got a mouse, your scroll wheel middle mouse button, so the button that is the scroll wheel, when you click it, you can use that to pan. So I don't find myself grabbing these tools a whole lot. I just tend to use my mouse, scroll wheel, or trackpad to kind of zoom in and out. And I find myself doing this a lot. Like I'll come over here, and you zoom in, you zoom out from wherever your mouse is. So if I put my mouse over here by this chocolate, and I zoom in, I will zoom in towards my mouse. And if I wanted to zoom out and zoom in towards this chocolate over here, I can just put my mouse over there and then I can zoom in and zoom out from wherever my mouse is. I think this is maybe 50% of people's initial frustration with Fusion, is just trying to figure out how to navigate and move around the 3D environment. It takes some getting used to. It takes some practice. Take some deep breaths. I promise you'll get through it. All right. So all of our tools in Fusion 360, our drawing tools, our creation tools, are all up here at the top. You will see this menu change sometimes. These tools will change. The name of the toolbars stays same, but the contents of them will change and the little icons will change depending on what we're doing here. So it's something to kind of keep an eye on. As we start making stuff, two things are going to happen. So our browser over here is going to start to populate with folders. And those folders are going to have stuff in it. Let me pull up a little example here again. So when I made a sketch, suddenly I had a sketches folder that popped up. And maybe I'll open this one up. I had a sketches folder that pops up, and in that sketches folder are all the sketches that I made to make my 3 little chocolates over here. Once I took those 3-dimensional chocolates or 2-dimensional sketches and I made them 3-dimensional, then I had a bodies folder that popped up here in my browser, and in that bodies folder are all of our 3-dimensional bodies that we have here in our drawing view here. The one other thing that will change as we start drawing is right now, here is an empty timeline. It's kind of a series of steps that we're going to do, and it's empty there, but here, let's pull up the chocolates one again. There we go. Here the timeline is much more full. So this is a series of steps, of actions that I took in order to get from that blank white room to a room full of chocolates. And at any point, Fusion 360 is what they call parametric design software. So I can go back in time and I can change something about one of these sketches, like this sketch right here. I can say, hey, let's make that 3 inches, and let's make that 2.5. I can make that a giant chocolate, and when I come back into the present, it just kind of updates with those changes that I made. Hopefully this will become more obvious as we start to draw things. I try to keep this pretty informal, so like if you got a question, don't hesitate to stop me and be like, hold on, go back. If I'm going too fast, it's probably not just you, so I'm happy to slow down or take a step back. As we get started here.
So I have a question right away.
Yeah.
Could you have just gone into the sketch and made the change in the sketch versus going through the timeline?
Yes, it works the same way. So that is why I think it's a really good habit to name your sketches. Here I've done a poor job of naming my bodies, but I've done a really good job of naming my sketches. So it's easy to right-click on your sketch, just like I right-clicked on the sketch down here in my timeline. And even if I hover over this sketch, it tells me what the name of the sketch is here. So I can see it's my shapes sketch. So same way I could right-click on it and say Edit Sketch. And then I go back in time, so it's all grayed out. I go back in time to when I was making that sketch, and I could change it back. And there we go. All right, so we've got a new document. In general, kind of the way that I think about things is I start about first making 2-dimensional sketches, and then taking those 2-dimensional sketches and making them in 3-dimensional shapes or 3-dimensional bodies. And so our process to do that is, if we come up to our Create menu, the second option down is Create Sketch. So let's all go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and click on create and then down to create sketch. Something that's great about Fusion 360 in general is I think it's really beginner friendly because of all these tooltips. So if you just hover your mouse over almost any of these menu items, you'll have a tooltip, and the first paragraph usually tells you what the tool does, and then the second paragraph usually tells you how to use the tool. So if you've never used the sketch creation tool before, the second paragraph says here I'm supposed to select a construction plane and then create lines, arcs, or points. So let's go ahead and choose that create sketch option. And again, if I just stop moving my mouse, it says, hey, I'm supposed to select a plane or a plein air face. In order to create a two-dimensional sketch in our three-dimensional drawing environment, we need kind of like an imaginary piece of paper to draw on. And these cubes here, these little planes, are some imaginary pieces of paper that we kind of start with in our room. So you can kind of think of these as the floor and a couple of walls. They're kind of like imaginary pieces of paper. I couldn't just start drawing out here, but if I put a piece of paper in front of my hand, then I can draw in the middle of this room here. It doesn't really matter a whole lot which one you choose, but in this case, I'm going to suggest that we draw on the floor, basically. So if you choose the cube, sorry, not the cube, the plane in between your green and your red axis, and I'm just going to click on that. And you will notice here is one of those occasions where our tools have changed. So we spin around so we're looking straight down. We're no longer kind of looking at this three-dimensional world. Now we're looking straight down at our plane. And across the top, we've changed over to our two-dimensional sketching or drawing tools here. In that list, you will see a whole bunch of fun things in that create menu. Let's go ahead and let's make a circle. So if I click on the create menu and I come down to circle, and then I choose center diameter circle. Are you joining us for Fusion class?
I am.
Excellent. So I'll choose that center diameter circle. The other circles here are just other ways to make a circle. So based on other things that you may or may not have drawn already, sometimes these other circle methods are great. Because we don't have anything else drawn right now, a center diameter circle is easy to make. I don't want to get too much into the weeds right now because some of us are pretty new here, but I do want to suggest that as a rule, some part of your drawing, some part of the sketch that we're about to be make should be connected to our origin. It has to do with constraints and having a sketch that's fully constrained. I don't want to get too much into the weeds right now because we're all new, but it'll save you some headaches later if when you're creating a sketch, some part of it is attached to our origin here. So I'm going to go ahead and click and place the center of my circle, and now I'm going to move my mouse out. So it's a click and release and then move, not a click and drag. And now I can specify how big I want that circle to be. Is anybody drawing in millimeters right now? Because I always forget to do that. So you can continue to draw in millimeters, which is indeed a standard unit of measurement that literally everybody else in the world uses, and I support your choices. Or you can switch over to freedom units. The way you switch to freedom units is over in document settings in our browser. There's a little triangle that's off the screen. If I click the little triangle and then I hover over where it says units, there's another little icon that pops up here. And then I get my little change active units. Did you catch that? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So, again, you can draw in millimeters if you want to. Unless you're in the United States, Myanmar, or Liberia, which for the record are the free countries, you would draw an interest. Freedom units, as I call them. How big do we want our chocolate to be? You can make your chocolate as big or as little as you want.
3 feet?
3 feet. 3 feet chocolate. That is a fine size for a chocolate. Although it would be difficult to make a mold for your chocolate that's bigger than 24 inches, because I'm pretty sure our vacuum former is only 24 inches. Is that accurate? Might be 36. 32? 24 to be on the safe side.
Yeah. I would think within 24.
I'm going to make mine 1.5 inches. And you can type in your measurements in a couple of different ways. So I can type it in 1 and 1 divided by 2. That's a fine way that Fusion recognizes. You can also type it in as the decimal, 1.5. However you want to do it is just fine. And then to place that measurement, I'm just going to click again to place that measurement there. It's worth noting that these measurements, I can move them around, so I can click and drag on the measurements, and I can place it outside the circle, or I can place it inside the circle. Sometimes Fusion sticks them in a weird way, and it's helpful to move them. If I decided that, hey, 1.5 isn't the number that I wanted, to change it, all I would have to do is double click on that measurement, and then I could change it to a different size if I wanted to. Cool, any questions so far? Is this your first time using Fusion?
No.
Nope, okay, cool, all right, perfect. So, I'm gonna go ahead and say finish sketch, because we have made a thing. Now, if I wanted to take that, first of all, let's do some housekeeping. Our sketches folder has popped up here, and we've got a sketch in it that is very inappropriately named Sketch 1. I am a fanatic about this. Name your sketches, name your bodies. It will save you lots of headaches later. I'm going to call it Anything is Better Than Sketch 1. It's a circle. It's when I drew that circle, or it's the chocolate shape, or it's the, you can write how big the circle is in the sketch.
How do you get it to?
So
edit mode?
if you click one time and then you pause and then you click a second time. So it's a double click, but it's a slow double click. So it's click, and then click. The other option is if you right click on it, you can say rename.
Yeah, right click ain't coming up
No?
either. I swear. This is why I don't use computers. Why right click?
Maybe click cancel or whatever that is. Maybe what we should do when you get that. And let's say finish sketch.
I didn't do that before, I swear. Okay,
There we go, nice.
I just have to make sure there's no other menus floating around.
There you go, yeah. Maybe because you were currently editing the sketch, like you had the sketch open.
Yeah, but I did press finish before, so I don't know what opened it.
And if you double click on a sketch, it will open. So if I just come over here and I double click on it, it'll just open it up as opposed to renaming it. So it's that pause, click, and then click. All right, cool. Everybody's got a circle, right? Sweet. All right. So now, if we come up to our Create menu, we can come over to our Extrude option. And I'm just gonna take this little blue arrow and I'm gonna drag it upward. Now, how thick do we want our chocolate to be? 3/4 of an inch too thick for a chocolate? Seems like an appropriate size. I am going to add a little flair here though. So every menu, every one of these create menus will have one of these little extra options here. So in addition to the distance, in fact, let's go in a little bit more depth here. The extrude window is full of lots of details that you can add to how your extrusion is being made. And almost all of the windows from your create menu will have a bunch of options like this. So a lot of them will have a start plane. So right now, the extrusion is starting from the profile plane. But if I wanted to, I could have it extrude starting from an offset. So I could say, don't extrude from the profile plane where I've made the sketch. Extrude it offset 1 inch from there. So I can extrude it out in the middle of nowhere out here. If there were additional bodies here, I could extrude it from an object. So if I had another shape up here, I could start my extrusion from an object, which can be really handy sometimes. But profile plane is a good option. If I wanted to, I could extrude this not just to one side, but I could do it 2 sides. So I could extrude it out a different direction, a different dimension in each side. Or I could extrude it symmetrically. I'm going to go back to one side. And then finally, in addition to the distance that you're extruding it, we can choose a taper angle here. And this is one of those little extra options that all these windows will have. Most of them will either be a taper or a twist. Sometimes there's a taper and a twist, but in this case it's a taper. And if I choose a negative number, like -10, you can see it tapers inwards there. I highly recommend this for your chocolate molds. If you have a mold that has zero taper to it, the sides of your mold are gripping that the whole way up, and it's very difficult to remove your mold or remove your part from your mold unless you have what they call a draft angle. So when we have a draft angle there, now it's really easy to, it comes right off. It's not scraping against the sides with all that friction on the way out. -10 is a pretty steep draft angle. In like injection molding, you might use 1 or 2 degrees as a draft angle depending on your material, but for chocolate, it's nice when they just fall right out. You don't have to pick at it. All right, so -10, if I were to go a positive number, it would flare out the other way, which I suppose is an option. All right, and then I'm gonna say okay.
And if you did 2-sided, you could make it like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, if you were experimenting around and you were like, hey, I'm gonna make it symmetric, you know, then it tapers in both directions, which is kind of fun, and it just kind of goes on and on. It would taper on and on until you get to 0, and then it, you know, you can just keep dragging this upward, and it won't go any further. All right. I'm gonna go back to one side. I'm gonna say okay. I think I was doing 3/4 of an inch, wasn't I? My chocolate got too little. I want a nice big piece of chocolate. All right. So once we have a shape drawn, once we have something drawn from our create menu, we can modify that if we want to with items from our modify menu. So in that modify menu, for example, there is a fillet and a chamfer option. And both of these are good choices for the top of your chocolate. I'm going to do a chamfer. And I think if we click on this top edge, and then I drag this inward here, just gives that top a little bit more of a little finished detail. And there we are. There is one chocolate done.
So you grabbed the edge, right?
I did.
Not the plane?
Correct. Well, either one will work in this case. So, edit feature. If I grab the top face, what the face does is it'll select every edge that is connected to that face. So in this case, it's all one edge. So in this case, it does the same thing as selecting the edge as my selection tool. Although, here, this will be a fun experiment. So if I select my face and I say, hey, make a little chamfer here, and then I'm going to say OK. Now, let's make a change to our sketch. So this original sketch that we made, either here, let's name our body. This body is called Candy 1. So a little candy. All right. So let's edit our sketch. Let's make a change to the shape of our chocolate. So if I come here to the circle sketch and I right click on it and I say edit sketch, now I'm going to draw an additional circle here. So if we come over to our create menu and I come over and I grab my center diameter circle tool one more time. And I'm going to make my circle, the center point of my circle is going to be right on the edge of my other circle here. I get a little blue X when I'm hovering over the edge of a line, and that's telling me that it's going to snap right to and connect to that line. So if I click and place my center point, and I'm going to make this circle 1 inch, 1 inch. You can make it as big or as little as you like. And then just take that measurement and drag it outside so it's a little bit more easy to read. So now we've got 2 circles, one on top of the other one. And now I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. Now nothing has changed so far. We just have 2 circles that overlap each other. But in addition to editing sketches, we can edit extrusions too. So down here in our timeline, in our little feature timeline down here, that second icon that's a little blue cube with an arrow pointing up, if we right click on that, we can choose to say edit feature. And now I can unselect that part of the sketch. So it was extruding all that, and I rotated my view so I'm looking at the underside of my object, because in the top, if I'm looking at the top here, I can't deselect the sketch because that sketch is on the other side of a surface here. It won't let me click on it. But if I rotate so I'm looking at the bottom, I can unselect it. And now I've got a slightly different shape.
So I don't see the second circle though, if I go into the sketch, I do.
Ah, that perfect. All right. So this is the one default that I changed in Fusion 360. You don't see the cutaway either. But your sketches folder here, there's a little eyeball next to the sketches folder itself, and there's a little eyeball next to each sketch inside of that sketches folder. And my guess is your sketch is turned off.
I see it now.
The one default that I've changed is that Fusion 360 automatically hides a sketch when you extrude something from it. And I rarely have one extrusion that I want to make from a sketch, so I turned off that default. If you're curious, I believe that is in preferences. If you right click on the icon, your bust of yourself up in the top right hand corner, and you come over to preferences, I want to say it's in the design section, and then it is, yeah, auto hide sketch on feature creation. I unchecked that box. Don't hide my sketches. Don't hide my sketches from me, I'll choose. All right. So now you can right click on that, and you can edit that feature, and you can turn off that sketch or turn on that sketch, and you can see it. And you can see when we come back into the present, it's added this chamfer to this top edge here. If it did not add that chamfer to your top edge, I bet it was because you picked the edge and not the face, which makes sense to me. So like this edge did not exist when I first made this chamfer, but it exists now. So if I had only picked this edge as my chamfer, when I came back into the present, this would not be chamfered, but everything else would be. Does that make sense? It would probably...
I hate to be a bother, but I can't figure out now how to take the chunk out. Now that I have my circle.
How to take the chomp out?
Yeah,
How do you change the extrusion? That's the question.
So if we come back to this, to our feature timeline right down here at the bottom, and I right click on it, and I can say edit feature, and now if I wanted to, I can add that back in, or I can subtract it out.
Okay, so.
And how are you doing the edit subtract? I didn't catch that.
You just have to spin around so you're looking at the bottom of your sketch, or you're looking at the bottom of your object. Just with your navigation cube there.
Okay, bottom.
There we go. Now you should be able to highlight that inner part of your
This
of
part
the
or
Venn
this part?
diagram, the center part, the part where the circles intersect.
Right here. This part.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh,
There we go.
that's it.
All I need to do is click on that then?
Yeah, if you're looking at the bottom side, there you go. Perfect.
Got it.
Yeah. And you can see over in our edit feature, our extrude window here, that there is a number of profiles selected here. So if I have more than one profile, more than one object selected, it'll show that I've got two selected there. I suppose another way to do it, if you can't seem to click on it or you can't seem to navigate around, is I could hit the little X button where it says profiles, and I could get rid of both of the sketches, profiles that are extruded, and then just go back and click on the one that I want. Does that make sense? All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, let's try to make one more chocolate here. Let's try to do a loft. I bet I'm not a loft. Let's try to do a sweep. A sweep is a fun tool. A sweep is fun because you can do a twist when you do a sweep. So I'm going to make a new sketch. Am I? No, I'm not. I changed my mind. I'm going to add the new chocolate shape I want to this existing sketch. And then maybe we'll get it a little in the weeds because we got 20 minutes. We'll be okay. So I'm going to right click on the sketch, either in my sketches folder or in my timeline down here. And either way, I'm going to click Edit Sketch. So now what's happening is we've gone back in time to before we made any of our extrusions or chamfers or anything like that. And we're back at our original sketch. What we've got here is we've got a black line and we've got a blue line. Black lines are signs that your sketches have been fully constrained. So a sketch that is fully constrained is locked in position in dimension and in position in the world. So I've given both of these circles dimension, but this circle down here has not been given a position in the world. This is why I was encouraging you to connect something to that origin, because having something connected to that origin gives it a position in the world. So this blue circle, I can click and drag on it, and I can move it around. Now, it's kind of partially constrained here. It won't move outside of this circle, and that is because there is a rule that has been given to this circle that says it cannot. If I hover over that little dot, the center point of my circle, you can see there's a little icon that pops up. You'll see these icons as we continue to draw. They'll kind of pop themselves up. The little blue X that we got when we clicked on it, that was a sign that I was going to get this little constraint. This happens to be a coincident constraint. So this coincident constraint is a rule about this circle that says, hey, it can only live on this other circle. But I can still move it left and right here if we wanted to, and I often want my sketches to be fully constrained. The reason I want my sketches to be fully constrained is I know I'm going to make changes about my sketches because I never do anything right the first time because I don't know what I'm doing. And anybody who tells you they know what they're doing before they start doing it is just lying to you, I think. We're all just figuring it out as we go. So the way that you make your sketches move predictably when you go to make those changes is by having things fully constrained. Things can jump around and move in strange ways, especially like curved lines. So if you can make your sketches fully constrained, they'll move a little bit nicer. And the way that I'm going to choose to fully constrain this sketch here is by adding a rule. So there's a whole list of constraints that we can add to our sketches after the fact to make them fully constrained. And so, like for example, the coincident constraint, that was the one that was given to our little center point as we were creating it. The one above that is actually really handy. This is called horizontal vertical. So what the horizontal vertical constraint does, if we choose it, it says it constrains a single line or 2 points to lie on either a vertical or horizontal axis, whatever is closer to the current alignment. So if I choose this horizontal vertical constraint, and here, let me talk about a little general rule here. Right now I've got something selected. I don't want to go ahead and choose a constraint if I've got something already selected. A better way to do it is to first choose your tool and then choose the item that you want to use that tool on. Sometimes when you click on something and then you say, hey, I'm going to come up and grab a constraint, it thinks that the thing you're constraining is the thing that's selected. So as a general rule, I like to click out in no man's land, just click out here in the middle of nowhere, and then I can go ahead and grab my horizontal vertical constraint tool. And now if I click on the center point of my large circle and the center point of my small circle, it'll just pop right into compliance right underneath. You don't have sizes.
I lost, I got an error here when I extruded.
Yeah, and tell you what, if you want to add sizes back, or let's say you made your circles and you forgot to add sizes, because a dimension is another kind of constraint, right? So if we've got our circles that don't have any dimensions to them, here I can click and drag on them and they get bigger or smaller, right? If I make them the wrong size. From the Create menu, you can actually scroll down and there's this Sketch Dimension tool in the Create menu here. So if you forgot to add a size to something, or you just want to define the dimension in another way, now I just have to click on my circle, and now I can place that measurement. So the way this works, this dimension tool works, is I click on the circle, and then I move my mouse out. Again, I click and move, not a click and drag. And now this is a dimension that I can place wherever I want to. And after I place the dimension, then I can edit it. So I can make it whatever the size is that I need it to be. I think I made that 1 inch before. Cool?
Is there a way to show the dimensions on the body itself?
Yes, and I just recently learned how to do this. Because I, in my spare time, watch Fusion 360 videos on YouTube too. There is a way, if we right click on the sketch, show dimensions. So if I say show dimensions, then, and now I don't even think I need to edit the sketch in order to change something. Yeah, I can, which can be really handy. It can also get super cluttered very quickly. So once again, if you do want to do that, you can right click on the sketch.
When you clicked on the restraints, did you click on the tiny little circles that are inside of them?
Yeah, just the little,
Because it then
the
moves
center
my guy
points.
all the way up there.
Yeah, and it moved it up there because it happens to be closer to that side. If you, before you click on that, you hit the escape key. You just click and drag on your little blue, and just drag it a little further. There you go. Now if you do it, we'll try to click out the no man's land here because you got it selected. And for our purposes, if it over in the horizontal side, it would be just fine too, right?
Okay.
Because the chocolate is.
Alright, I guess I didn't see it move on yours, so I
Okay,
was wondering
sure.
what I did wrong again.
No, you're all good. How are you?
Not great.
So, it looks like. Cancel. So, if we right click on our extrude option. Maybe after finish your sketch. There you go, now you see edit feature. And, so,
Yeah, so I lose that second circle.
yeah, so your second circle is actually made on a different sketch. So,
Okay.
So here,
Go
the
back to
pans
the
are-
first. Get rid of this sketch.
You can actually, you can hold on to it. We'll just extrude yours out a different way. So if you come up to the extrude, in fact, here, let me show this to everybody because this will be really handy. So let's say, for example, you made this in 2 different sketches, which is a totally fine way to do things. I'm going to right click on this extrusion and I'm going to say edit feature, and I'm going to add back in my little extra bit there. So if you've got a situation where you made your second circle as a second sketch, what I can do is I can come and look at the bottom side of my chocolates here. If I click on the create menu and come over to the extrude window, or the extrude tool, I'm going to choose the whole circle as my item that I'm going to extrude. And if I drag, we can talk about the last thing in the extrude window that I did not talk about. If I drag this arrow away from my other shapes, the operation here defaults to join. So what it's saying is it's going to join this body to this body and just make it one body. Initially, the operation was set to new body because we just had one shape out there. But if I take this blue arrow and I drag it into my shape, I can change this operation to cut. And what cut does is it cuts out a shape here. Now, something to keep in mind is we still want to add our taper here. So if we're choosing to do this with a cut, we should do a positive 10-degree taper. It's not really a taper if it goes out, right? What's the opposite of a taper? Flare.
Flare.
There we go. We'll do a 10-degree flare. And that will do the same kind of job. Only, without our chamfered edge. Can I just move this? Look at that. Hey. I made a. You could just take these items down here. You can drag them around. So this fillet that we added it before we made that extrusion. I can just click and drag on this and say, hey, no, make that fillet after that extrusion, and then it adds it to it for us. Successful cut?
Oh, I'm getting an error.
Oh, good.
So, try to extrude, right?
And I think you only have part of your circle selected. So spin around so you're looking at the bottom of your circle here. So you only have this part of the circle selected.
I got it.
There you go.
So it is shift.
Yep, there we go.
Alright, so let's say 50 millimeters. Cut.
And it looks like you want to go -50.
Yep, you're right.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. How you doing?
So this is a separate sketch,
Yeah.
and it automatically puts all the sketches on.
Oh,
the
your
same-
fillet.
Yeah.
Yes. It
Well,
looks like there's a little red.
Just another timeline of separate sketches.
Right click on it and just say edit feature.
Yeah, 3
Unless you just
sketches.
kind of lost
Yeah,
that
which
edge.
this one is.
Doesn't know where it went to.
But it's
So
putting them
because
all
it's
on the
on
same
edge,
surface,
now we're
so you
looking
can,
at
Yes.
this.
you can, whatever you're building.
You can get
There
rid
we
of
go,
it.
and then you can tell it how
It's the
big
same.
it is.
It's the same
Go
person.
like
Yep.
0.05 or something like that. There we go.
Okay.
Cool. Just gotta take the edge off.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta put some bourbon in these chocolates. It'll really take the edge off. Yeah.
Yeah, we extrude a hollow once, we fill it with bourbon.
So I don't want to cram doing a sweep into 5 minutes because it doesn't do it justice. And I think when I speed up, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't do anybody any favors. So I encourage you to explore the sweep on your own if you'd like to. Otherwise, we'll do another project next class. I come early on Mondays, so I'm frequently here by like 6-ish. So if you want to come early, I'm happy to answer questions that you might have. Or if you're like, hey, can you show me how to use the sweep tool before class? I will 100% do that next week. So, any questions as we wrap up? Yeah?
Well, you could probably go after class. I was trying to figure out, when you're cutting holes in a surface,
Sure.
how do you get one of those like elongated holes that is curved?
Like a slot.
Like a slot, but a curved.
curved
A curved slot, yeah. So, sketching is really handy, and circles are really handy. And you're gonna be using these rules a lot. So, if I wanted to make a slot in my chocolate, let's just make a slot off. Yeah, I'm gonna make a slot in the chocolate. Why not? So if I make a couple of circles that are concentric to each other, I'm not defining a size here, but you obviously should define a size
Okay.
so you know how big they are. And then there is a circle option called a 2-point circle. And if I add a 2-point circle on this side, and I'm going to purposefully do it poorly. So you can see I've got a really bad 2-point circle, and then I've got another really bad 2-point circle. The constraint that's going to be your friend here is going to be the tangent constraint, which there it is, right there at the top. So the way the tangent constraint works is I click on the two things that I want to be tangent, or the circle and the line, or the circle and the other object that I want to be tangent to each other. And now I have a curved slot. There is a trim tool. There is a tool that would allow me to trim off the excess of this circle. I don't like using it, and here's why. So I think if I actually do this right, and then give that some real dimension. I don't know what, oh, those aren't defined in space, that's why. If I use, I think it's in modify, if I use this trim tool and I trim away this excess, I don't know that it will let me modify this dimension again. Oh, it does. It does, yeah. So there is a tool here in Modify called Trim, and if I just hover over line segments, it just cuts off in between connecting points. So I can cut off the parts of the circle, and I could do, I guess, these guys too. Cut off those parts of the circle that I don't really need. And now I can come up to finish sketch, and I could extrude that
And then cut it.
up through the middle, yeah.
So the concept is you're creating shapes and combining them to get whatever end result you're after.
Yeah, so in 3D land, we would call this a Boolean operation. In a lot of 3D programs, they call this a Boolean, which is a weird French word, maybe. But
Probably named after a guy.
that could be Jacques Bouillon, I'm guessing, or Hans Gregor Bouillon III. Yeah,
George Boole.
George Boole, is that really his name?
Yeah.
Nice. Jorge?
No,
Jorge
not
Boole?
George. He was English.
Ah, close. So he's real proper. Yeah, so that's how I would make a curved slot. Now, locating that in your curve, is
No, I get it.
another thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, beautiful.
Yeah, solid.
I'm gonna